Thomas is a tank engine who lives at a big station on the island of Sodor. He's a cheeky little engine with 6 small wheels, a short stumpy funnel, a short stumpy boiler, and a short stumpy dome. Before I get into this list, I should probably mention that this is not a top 10 list of episodes from Thomas and Friends the show, but rather my top 10 favourite episodes that specifically focus on Thomas the Tank Engine himself. I'll be doing a video like this for the vast majority of the cast. Feel free to let me know what your favourites are down in the comments. If you enjoy this video and want to see more like it, then don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and ring Toby's bell to stay notified for when I post new content. Now with all of that out of the way, let's get started. I don't mind telling you that this list was rather difficult to come up with. Since Thomas is the main character, he naturally has tons of episodes to himself. He does have quite a few that are less than stellar, but he also has plenty of gems. One of those episodes being number 10, Not So Slow Coaches. I'm sure that some of you may be surprised to see a CGI episode on this list, especially considering how often I've mentioned that I'm not overly familiar with it. Mostly since I don't have the means to watch it right now. However, this is one of the episodes that I have been fortunate enough to see. I first became aware of it after watching the Unlucky Tugs video on hidden gems in the CGI series, and I gotta say that when I did check this episode out, I fell in love with it. This episode perfectly portrays the relationship between Thomas and Annie and Clarabelle. Other episodes have attempted to do this in the past, but in my opinion, they just missed the mark. This episode, on the other hand, beautifully shows the audience just how much these three mean to each other. It starts out with Thomas being his usual cheeky self, pushing his luck with his 2 old coaches, and in turn they complain about him going too fast. Later, Thomas leaves them in the yard while he goes off to do other work. When he returns, he spots them being accidentally taken by Caitlin, and he immediately jumps in to save them. Seeing Thomas give chase, despite the potential dangers, just hits so beautifully. It really shows just how much the old pair mean to him. Annie and Clarabelle also have a nice little arc, learning not to complain about Thomas's speed again. You know, sometimes in life, we don't truly know how much something or someone means to us until they're gone, and this episode demonstrates that really well. Of course, there is a happy ending. Hero appropriately manages to save the coaches, and the episode ends with the trio travelling off into the sunset. It's just a really sweet and endearing episode that perfectly demonstrates the relationship of the series' 3 most recognisable characters. Number 9. Thomas the Jet Engine. This is one of those episodes that is just played for laughs. Thomas wants to go as fast as Gordon, and he gets to do just that and even go beyond. That's something I actually really appreciate that the episode kept intact. Thomas's desire to be as fast as Gordon, something that was established way back in season 1.
Hurry, 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 he puffed, pretending to be like Gordon.
The scene where Thomas overtakes Gordon is my favourite moment in the episode, and one of my favourites in the entire series. Gordon's reaction is priceless. It's also one of Michelangelo's best performances ever. I don't really have anything else to say. Anyone who has seen this episode will instantly know why it would be on such a list. Sometimes, a simple episode played for basic humour is all you really need, and this one always manages to bring a smile to my face. Number 8. Thomas and the Statue. Anyone who has watched the hit era will be able to tell you just how inconsistent Thomas is as a character, making the times where he is in character feel all the more special. At least, that's how it feels to me. In all honesty, I think that this might be my favourite Thomas-focused episode from this era. Thomas gets a big head from thinking the titular statue is of him, and won't stop boasting about it. Everyone gets annoyed with him and starts wanting to avoid him. Thomas ends up feeling bad about his behaviour and goes out of his way to clear the lines of snow for everybody. Considering just how much Thomas hates wearing his snowplow, this is really endearing. It's not often that Thomas willingly wears his plough, so when he does, it just hits differently. I think that this, along with the episode Hector the Horrid, are perfect examples of how Thomas should have been portrayed throughout the hit era. He's still relatively young and has that cocky, arrogant, egotistical side to him, but he's also grown up a lot and is willing to do the right thing, even if that good thing is something that he hates. Good job, Thomas. Number 7. Thomas, Percy and the Coal. Ah yes, the Season 2 premiere episode. And what a premiere it was. This episode, in my opinion, perfectly sets the tone for the season. Many of the staples of Season 2 came to be here. This is where we got more uses of panning camera angles with foreground details, and a much grittier aesthetic. And of course, it's also our first look into the dynamic between Thomas and Percy. These two were almost never on screen together in the first season. Hell, they never actually had any dialogue with each other either. But now, we actually get to see what their friendship is like, and oh boy, it's a doozy. These two are far from the iconic best friends that they would become years later. No, here, their relationship is very true to the books, showing us that they are more along the lines of being frenemies. Given that they are both feisty, cheeky, young, angsty, and of course naive, it's no wonder that they would often butt heads. And in this, we get to see just what happens when they do so. It's also one of those gem of an episodes where neither party is portrayed as being in the right, and as a result, they both lose. I love these types of stories. They feel so much more grounded. In addition to all that though, this episode is novel, given that we get to see Toby take Annie and Clarabelle, along with that shot of Thomas being submerged in the coal heap. Overall, this episode is fun, and serves as both a solid Season 2 premiere, and works well as an introduction to Thomas and Percy's friendship. Number 6. Thomas and Gordon. I honestly don't think that the show could have had a better premiere episode, even if it had tried. It's nothing groundbreaking, but this story perfectly exemplifies to the audience as to what type of character the protagonist is gonna be. Thomas is a young, cheeky and arrogant little arsehole, and he gets his just dues in a very comedic way. It also does a good job of setting up Gordon's character too, which is appropriate considering that he had the second most lead roles in the season. I love seeing these two clash. They're arrogant and think themselves better than others, so it's just fun to see them butt heads. It also has the first non-scary moment of the show that frightened me as a kid, and it's that scene where Gordon plots to pay Thomas out. I don't know why, but that ditty, combined with Gordon's angry face and the sudden movement of his eyes, really got to me as a kid.
Instead of going to sleep again, Gordon thought how he could get back at Thomas.
Hell, a lot of Season 1's moments really got to me, which I'm definitely going to touch on in the future. Even if you don't care for the characters of Thomas and or Gordon, you still gotta respect this episode for kicking off the show. Thomas the Tank Engine and friends had to start somewhere, and it did so wonderfully. Number 5. Thomas and the Trucks. This one is just pure fun. As the penultimate chapter to Thomas's original character arc, this episode sees Thomas attempt to make up for his previous mishap the last time he tried to pull a train. The entire set piece feels like we're travelling along with Thomas. Combined with that catchy rendition of his theme used for this one episode, you really feel like you're getting a sense of fulfillment and enjoyment. Thomas has longed to be able to successfully pull a train for a while now, and at last, he's finally able to do so. What's that? The trucks are getting cross? Ah, who cares? Oh. Poor Thomas. Yeah, this is the first time we see Thomas in a position of sympathy. He was put in a similar position at the end of his first episode. However, he kind of brought that one upon himself. Whereas here, it almost seems as if he's finally earned himself a bit of success, only for it to be ripped away from him. Of course, Thomas does finally succeed to the fullest extent in the next episode, but this one is a crucial step in his arc that will inevitably lead to him earning his branch line. And of course, we can't forget that this episode introduces the troublesome trucks, a staple of the series, which just makes this one all the more significant. A fun time and a significant episode. While it may seem fairly rudimentary on the surface, there's a lot more to this one than meets the eye. Can't be skipped. Number 4. Thomas Goes Fishing. All of the stories from Tank Engine Thomas again are bangers to me. Simple, fun stories with no major connection. This one, along with Thomas, Terence and the Snow, plays right into Thomas's naivety. Thomas wants to go fishing, but just can't seem to understand that it's not something engines do. He does get his wish, and he immediately regrets it. This is one of those episodes that isn't inherently scary, but that rising theme as Thomas starts to feel a pain in his boiler, along with the sudden shocked ditty, just really got to me as a kid. And now, that is something that I fondly look back on. The moral is pretty obvious, but who cares? That's not really the focus of the story. It's just a silly scenario played for laughs. It's not an important episode, but it is significant, given that they also made a song about it. Sometimes, all you need is a fun and basic episode that is just a little bit silly, and this one is just that. Number 3. Thomas and the Missing Christmas Tree. This is both my favourite winter episode and my favourite Christmas episode. Despite that, I don't really have all that much to say about it. I just really like it. It's a nice episode to close the spectacular season 2. The last shot with Thomas says "Happy Christmas everyone" almost feels like he's saying it to us, the audience. Which, if that is the case, then it might very well be the first time that a character has broken the fourth wall. As is the case with any winter themed episode in the model series, the sets are even more beautiful than usual. We also get a nice rendition of the Watermill theme that simply adds in a tambourine. Who knew that a single instrument could change the feel of a piece of music? Well, Mike and Junior did, obviously. We also get more iconic shots of Thomas in the snow, though this time he appears to be more annoyed about his predicament, as opposed to sad about it, so I guess that indicates a little bit of growth. Overall, a really nice episode, and a fine way to cap off both the second season and Ringo Starr's tenure as narrator. Number 2. Down the Mine. Several episodes eluded me as a kid, and this was one of them. I only knew about the events of it because it was referenced in Paint Pots and Queens. I never actually saw it on TV, and for years I could never find a VHS that contained it. But when I did eventually manage to find it and watch it, I loved it. This is Thomas the Tank Engine in the truest form of his character. Thomas is rude and cheeky to another character. He aims to do something that he knows is naughty, but does it anyway, and as a result, he humiliates himself. This episode also has some development for Gordon, which is fitting since it was a crucial story in his book. However, it's more of a nice closer for both Gordon and Thomas in the show. As the unlucky Tug put it, the ending to this episode makes it feel like a true season finale. Since season 1 started with Thomas and Gordon, and they were the most prominent characters in it, it just makes sense that the season should close with them. Seeing these two put their differences aside after they were first seen together really shows just how much they had grown. I also really like this shot of the lead mine. Hell, I really like the mine in general. I don't think that we ever see it again. This episode also has a solid amount of novelty and trivia to it as well, what with it being the initial pilot and a couple shots of it being reused when they refilmed it, along with the rest of the season. Overall, this episode is notable for many reasons, and is not one to be overlooked. Before we get to the number 1 spot, here are a few honourable mentions. And after a lot of consideration, my all-time favourite episode centred around Thomas the Tank Engine is Thomas Comes to Breakfast. This is the episode I tend to think of first when thinking about ones involving the Blue Tank Engine. I mentioned how down the line is Thomas in his truest form. Well, this one is too. Thomas gets a big head, expresses a desire to do something that he should know better than to try. He gets an opportunity and takes it, and then it leads to hilariously disastrous results. I have seen some people criticise this episode and the original story, claiming that the Fat Controller is out of line for reprimanding Thomas for the crash, which wasn't actually his fault. However, I think these people are missing the point. The Fat Controller isn't stupid. He knows that engines can't drive themselves. He's reprimanding for Thomas for boasting and wanting to do something dangerous. This episode has many quirks that make it resonate with fans. You've got the crash itself, which, while not astonishing, is still done really well. There's also the station master's wife, who has now become a bit of a meme within the fandom, and rightfully so. There is another iconic image of Thomas and his bush. I really love the dynamic between Thomas, Toby and Percy. It's fun when they all clash. Seeing Toby and Percy smiling next to Thomas at the end of the episode was a nice touch that wasn't present in the book. You can just tell that they're waiting to rip into it. This episode isn't anything groundbreaking, and is in fact rather simple in its structure, but that's what I love about it. Sometimes a simple slice of life story with a well done crash and some good humour is all you need from a Thomas episode. And as such, this one is one of my go-to on rewatches. Well, those episodes were harder to list than I expected. Considering how many episodes focus on Thomas, I'm sure a lot of you will have very different lists to mine, so please, feel free to share them down in the comments. We're going to be covering the engines in numerical order for this series, so naturally, that means we're going to cover Edward next time, so stay tuned for that. As always, I hope you all enjoyed and thank you so much for watching. Now until next time, I've been Cinders and Ashes UK, you've been awesome, and have a great day. Bye!